All right, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 11. So I'm doing this solo, a little scary. The reason I'm doing episode 11 is because on the episode with Joseph Blackman, he mentioned about 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 11, which I thought was fascinating. So I wanted to do a solo pod here quick. Don't know how long we'll do, but essentially the topic I want to talk about doing YouTube for the last 5 years, having 4 different YouTube channels. I've had some questions from people on starting their own channel. What does it look like? What do you need? So I just want to cover some of those topics specifically on what I've learned over the past 5 years with 4 different channels. And go through lessons learned, what I did well, what I didn't do well, what I wish I would have known, that kind of stuff. So I do want to start out with a little thank you all around. So we did make it to episode 11. We've had 10 other guests onto the show. What is fascinating about starting a podcast is everyone says you shouldn't be a guest on a newer podcast because they don't make it to episode 11. So the first 10, they kind of, whatever the topics are, they put them out there and then it dies slowly on a vine and you feel bad. So a big push for me is making sure that, the guests that I do have on, it's not for no reason. So that is a big push for me to stay focused and stay consistent. So I want to thank all the guests I've had on so far. I've had more than 10 so far. It's just not all of them released yet. So I want to thank all of them for coming on. And I want to personally thank for everyone for being open and honest and telling their story. Because some of the topics, we've dug into some things, talked about some personal things, and just, trusting me to, walk through that path with them or whatever that needs to look like. I really appreciate it. Next, I want to thank the listeners / watchers / viewers. I have a bunch of notes here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So currently audio, we have 68 downloads from my Buzzsprout stats. So I want to thank everybody who's actually listened to the audio version. And right now we're just over 12K views on YouTube between the long form and shorts. So big thank you to everyone, whether I know you personally, you're doing it just out of the kindness of your heart, or you actually enjoy it. Thank you either way. So I want to thank everybody who's done that at this point. And last person I want to thank is my daughter Lexi. She's doing a lot of the editing behind the scenes. So all those shorts and those uploads to YouTube, that's all her, making thumbnails, making sure things are clean and concise. So I want to thank her for that. So her talent alone has gotten us the 12.1K views so far. So thank you. And then a huge shout out to my wife, Jenny, because she allows me to do this and spend 2 hours up in my game room talking to random people from everywhere in all different walks of life. So thank you to everyone all around, podcast guests, the viewers, listeners, Lexi, and my wife, Jenny. So a huge thank you all around. So I want to jump into what 5 years and 4 YouTube channels has taught me. Broke some things up here, just trying to be concise and just explain, if you're thinking about doing a YouTube channel or you've thought about it and you're just not sure, maybe I can provide some insight into that. If you do watch this and you are thinking about doing it, you can certainly ask any questions down below if you're watching it on YouTube. So I posted my first YouTube video July 30th, 2019, and it currently sits at 84,000 views. It was about my zero-turn mower, which is actually really funny because I remember thinking like, what do I want to do? So I did some earlier YouTube videos, but they were just gaming. They had no voiceover. They had no structure. It was just gameplay. So I don't really consider them, even though I posted them. I didn't know what it was doing, and it didn't have any of my actual character, and there was no work. So it was just a record and upload. So I don't really consider that, actually part of the YouTube journey. The one with structure and actually thinking about what I wanted to do and reviewing something was my zero turn. 84,000 views is, it's a big number, but in the grand scheme of 5 years, it's really not, if you divide that up, it's really not that many, but it's cringy, and it should be because it was my first one. So right now, all in between my 4 channels, I have about 2.37 million views, which is pretty crazy to think about. I'm not sure I ever wrapped my head around that entire stat itself, but yeah, there's a lot of views out there. So why did I start? I mean, I had some inspiration. I don't know. We've talked about Casey Neistat when I did my podcast episode with Mike. And actually, he was a big Casey fan as well. So if you don't know who Casey Neistat is, he's probably one of the best storytellers on YouTube. He was one of the kind of OG vloggers in New York City. Really cool, really inspirational guy, super friendly, did a lot of skateboarding through New York City, but just also did other big things for like HBO before he started his YouTube channel. massive audience, just all around really interesting, great person. He went on a streak of doing a vlog every day, I think for like a little over 3 years. So unheard of, in the sense of keeping coming back and staying consistent. But his storytelling is what really brought me in and made me feel like I knew him. And that's something I don't think I do very well. I'm more of a very statistic detailed person. So which is why I probably focus on reviews more. But yeah, I wanted to share my specific view on things and I wanted to learn new skills. So that was a big thing for me was, could I do it? Could I figure everything out? It's very complicated. YouTube seems easy. And then you get into it, it's actually quite complicated. And so I want to talk about some of those skills specifically. So how to record video, record video properly is not an easy thing. You think it's just holding up a camera, but it's also taking consideration of your background, lighting, audio, what's in the picture, how close to the screen should you be, how close is your face, what is the proportion, should it be on left side, right side, the thirds, all that kind of stuff. So just video recording is, pretty complex in itself. And do you need a $2,000 digital camera or DSLR, or can you do it with your phone? Phones have come a long way, so I would say probably start with your phone. Video editing, I actually hated video editing very early on. I taught myself DaVinci Resolve mostly from YouTube. Thank goodness for YouTube. It's where I learned most every new skill. So I use DaVinci Resolve because it's free. They do have a paid version, but for the skill set and the video editing type I'm doing, it's not super fancy, especially with reviews. I don't get crazy with them, so it solves my problem. I've also learned how to use CapCut. Once you learn video editing, you can kind of transfer some of those skills because in general, like the usage is the same. They just may call it something different. So CapCut's great for like a web-based version. Obviously, you have to kind of upload everything like to the cloud, but I started with DaVinci Resolve, which is what I still use. That was probably one of the hardest things to learn because there's so many buttons. It's a new program. I'm pretty good at learning things like that from a digital standpoint, just a computer standpoint. So it took me, 1 or 2 years to get proficient. Once I got proficient, I realized I didn't hate it as much. But during that 2-year period, like it was the most dreaded part of putting a video together for me. So I would say watch out for that if you aren't great with computers, you don't like learning new programs. This is going to be a very tough one. It's going to be one you want to outsource, but it's probably the most expensive thing to outsource. So just a heads up there. Thumbnails. So you think it's just a lot of people don't spend time on thumbnails, and if the sequencing of YouTube videos really should be idea, title, thumbnail, and then actual script structure, and then record and then edit. A lot of people do it backwards. I did it backwards for a long time. I would come up with a half-assed idea, video record because I wanted to get all the content, put it together, and I'd come up with the title and thumbnail last. That's actually the complete opposite of what you should do, because if you want to make everything concise and feed the audience what they're expecting from the title and thumbnail, you got to do the title and thumbnail first. So once you get to that, and the idea is the most important part, I think people get lost on that as well. You should spend more time coming up with the idea of a video than you should actually doing the full video. So I think that's a pretty fascinating idea too. So Photoshop, had to teach myself Photoshop as well. Photoshop's fairly new for me. I was doing most of my thumbnails through Canva, which is absolutely possible if you have the ideas and you have the structure, and AI's obviously made that a lot easier from any program you're using. It doesn't need to be Canva, but Canva was free at the time, so I was using that. And then I wanted to get into more detail. I wanted to lay words behind pictures. I wanted to cut specific things out. So I wanted to learn Photoshop, which I did. I would say I'm certainly not probably proficient, but I'm dangerous enough to do kind of fun things that I want to do with my thumbnails. So Photoshop and thumbnails, another skill I live. Storytelling, still weak at this, learning this. I think the main way to learn this is you really got to listen to really people who are very good, explain the process, how to keep people engaged, like the segmenting, coming back, pulling people back in, leaving questions. Like there's a whole process and procedure for that. And I'm so analytical and calculated. I feel like my stories are hitting certain points where it doesn't draw people in. People who are planners like me, like really appreciate that portion of my videos, but people who aren't are like, this person's boring or this is taking way too long. I hear both sides of those stories. So I think it's interesting just to see how people kind of take your different approaches. But marketing, had to learn a lot of personal marketing. I was not very good at marketing, didn't know anything about sales marketing in general. And this has really helped out in my professional life with the way I view marketing and the way you view groups of people, the psychology of it all. The big thing with the marketing, I would say, for your YouTube channel is just figure out what your avatar or your perfect audience member would be, and then just write a video and ideas for that specific person. That is the best way. I think coming up with ideas is like the hardest part of YouTube, and because you're trying to think of what will work. Don't try to think of what will work for everyone. Think of what will work for your perfect audience member. And if you do that, it'll really hyper focus you into the title, thumbnails, and everything. You're just trying to think. And if that audience member is you, for instance, like my travel videos, I think I'm writing them for me most of the time of what I would be looking for before I go spend money. I want to know all the intricate details. So I really try to make a video for myself, and it makes it a little bit easier. So if your perfect audience member is yourself, it should be a little bit easier to put yourself in that seat. Which took me probably 3 years to come up with that or understand that concept. Um, the one thing I would say is if you are just starting out, I would spend like a month or 2 months just listening to all YouTube experts to gather. So it's interesting because Mr. Beast talks about this. I think he spent like 2 years just researching YouTube, the perfect YouTube video. Him and his friends, his small group of friends, would just research. And every evening they'd come back and talk about it. It was almost like a mini book club, but with research on how to make the perfect YouTube video. And that dude obviously has figured it out a million times over. So I would say do a lot of the legwork and research to make sure that's something you want to put that amount of time in, because it takes a lot of time. And to do it right, you can certainly throw videos up and, hit a viral video or get successful, but it is quite a process, and it is the long game for most people. And then how to better connect with an audience is kind of the last skill I learned. So a big thing is responding to comments, staying in tune with that. I don't do this ultimately well, but I do. I'm a very responsive person to comments because they come right to the app on the phone with YouTube Studio, so you can stay up on that. I know when I leave a comment, I'm asking a genuine question. I really appreciate when the YouTuber or the person behind the camera actually reaches back out and expresses or answers the question I'm looking for. So if you do that for people, once again, become genuinely interested in other people. Thank you, Dale Carnegie. So on to why 4 channels. That's a great question, Brandon, on your own podcast. So this one took me a while. I had 1 channel, which is this channel right here. And it was a general store channel. And what I mean by that is I had a little bit of everything under the roof, which if you know anything about YouTube, um, you shouldn't do that, because the way the algorithm works, they're trying to bring an audience to you. The thing about YouTube is you are not going and finding an audience for YouTube. You're posting a video, and then YouTube's taking all of the audience and they test. They'll drop a couple people at your video and see how it performs, right? And then if that doesn't perform well, they'll pull a different group of people and they'll drop a couple. And if that starts performing well, then they bring more of those people into your, let's say, corral where your video sits. And if it keeps feeding well with that demographic or whatever those types of people like to watch, then it'll keep feeding that, and then that's when you get expansive growth. But then if it drops 3 or 4 or 5 different types of people and no one's responding, then that's kind of how it can flatline as well. So YouTube's bringing the audience to you, you're not bringing an audience to YouTube. And it took me many years to figure that out as well, once I actually started doing deep dive research on YouTube on how to improve. So the reason the general store didn't work is because YouTube didn't know what audience to bring. Because I would go from like a truck video, a Jeep Gladiator video, a zero-turn mower, to a travel video, to a gaming video. I was all over the place. So every time I dropped a different style of video, it would bring an audience from my previous video, and then it would be like, wait, that's not working, it's not performing. So it was actually confusing, the algorithm on what I was. So I actually sat with a coach and walk through that whole concept. And they told me, like, you can't have all these niches under one roof. And I said, well, I'm the type of person where I don't want to get bored making the same video all the time. So I said, should I break these all into their own videos? And they said, no, that's a terrible idea. But I also had a lot of stuff that I worked on that was, it took me a long time to put together. And I didn't just want them to stay in a drive and never be seen again. So I decided to break them out into 4 different channels, and the 4 different channels allows me to bounce between the 4 of what my interests are at the moment, because I can jump around personally myself quite a bit. I would say it's a lot of more work to have 4 different channels, and I think if I wanted to be actually more successful, and I wouldn't even call myself successful on YouTube, but if I wanted to be more hyper focused and possibly have more success, I should just stick to one channel and just explode with that. But I think I would lose interest over time. So this allows me to hop around a little bit to my different focus areas of my life that I like making videos about. And when I get a little fed up in one area, or I just don't have time for that specific hobby, then I'm jumping to another, and it kind of keeps me well rounded. And I think it fits who I am as a person. I wouldn't say it's the right move. And actually, the coach I was working with said it was the wrong move. So this was more just to fit my personal style as a human being and the way my brain works. So yeah. So pick a niche, pick something that you can make a lot of time for that you won't get tired of. And that was really why I went for channels. I love to travel. We travel a good amount. I like making travel videos when I'm on vacation and when we are traveling. I like to game, obviously, but I can't do it all the time because sometimes I get busy. My truck stuff was very important to me, when my truck was new. So getting those videos out and learning my truck myself was really important, and then the podcast is kind of like my newest one where it's a new venture and it allows me to kind of express content in a different way. So, yeah, so that's why I split everything into 4 different channels. Don't bring the audience, based on performance badge, early performance, video late, dormant. So, okay. So, and the one thing when you decide if you are planning on doing a channel, and like I said, you're trying to find that perfect audience member and you're making videos for that perfect audience member, always, if you can solve a problem with your video ideas, that's the easiest way to get the audience. So if you're in your niche and you're thinking about, if I am this perfect audience member, what is a problem that I'm really concerned about in this? For instance, in my travel videos, like what are, a video idea I've been throwing around is, what are 10 items that are under $100 that I always travel with? With traveling so much, what are those items I always take that are always in my bag or on the plane or in my carry-on or whatever, that are under $100 that I never leave home without? I think that'd be interesting because I would want to know that, because I like gadgets and things that make travel easier for me. So it's, something I've been toying around with, and that solves the problem of like not having to go figure it out and read a bunch of Amazon reviews or whatever. Talking to someone who's travels enough, wouldn't consider myself an expert by any means, but traveling enough to understand like these are the things that make travel comfortable for me. So I took all the videos, I split them out, made 4 different niche categories to help the growth, and then it helps with my focus change. So that's why 4 channels. Did not start out that way. I started out all under one, and I could tell my performance was certainly slowing down because I was constantly switching niches. That word's so confusing, under one channel. So next, the tip for new YouTubers. So I have a couple things here, and I may expand on this a little bit more as we're talking through this, but tip for new YouTubers, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but choose a topic, what interests you, and you could talk about forever. So for me, travel, gaming, the podcasting, being able to talk to different people and learn things from everyone is really important. And then my truck one's kind of the least of my worries right now, because I really have covered a lot about my truck. Most of the time when I'm coming back to that channel, it's because I have a couple people or a couple companies that I work with that send me stuff for my vehicle, and I'll do reviews on that. But that's a little bit of the back burner. The travel and the gaming and the podcast stuff is kind of forefront for me right now. And I could talk to forever about gaming, because the gaming gives me a large scope to try different games and review them or whatever I want to do with that. So plenty of area to move around in there. Travel's great because I get to see different places. So if I'm going to a new place, I like researching it. So I'm trying to provide that feedback to audience members. And then the podcast, I love learning from people. So that's kind of a newer venture, obviously, because we're episode 11. The reason I say pick something you can talk about forever, because there'll be days where you don't want to do a video about anything in the genre or niche at all. That's, like I said, the main reason I have 4 channels. That allows me to jump around. I would not say it is the path for success, but there'll be days where it'll be a grind to make a video about something you thought you were passionate about. So really take some time to think about that, because there will be days coming where you just want to not do it and quit. And that's the hardest part, is staying consistent. So, prep. Some of the prep things: think about your name, think about channel customization, and then gear. So name, you want your channel to either be, can be specific to your name, or it needs to be something where someone can tell just by the name what your channel is about. Like Haul Gaming or Detailed Traveler. Like that is very specific. Now I would say Haul YT has nothing to do with my truck channel. It's just the original name I had. And it doesn't really garner, I wish I would have done like Live In with Rivian, which is kind of like my branding on that channel. But, think about the name. The name should tell the viewer what they're expected to get from your channel. Channel customization, don't get crazy here. The banners, make sure it's a good profile. I would say use your face on the profile picture. People connect with people. People buy from people. People consume from people. So if it's just a logo, it's a little bit disingenuous, and you may not get as much channel recognition. Now, some people are highly successful with having a logo, but I think it takes a little bit more work. It's an easy win to have your face on the profile picture. The rest of it, you want to think about playlists, you want to think about layout, you want to think about the new subscriber kind of video that plays when new people come to your channel. So all that kind of stuff. There's lots of videos out there on what good looks like there. Trailers you can certainly make. I don't really have a trailer for any of my channels. I just use videos I made in the past. But the customization is just kind of where it should all make sense. So whatever your approach is to your specific channel, it should all flow, whether that's channel art, whether your profile picture, your about, and then the way you have your playlist and everything laid out. Just make them interesting, and then all flows into the same kind of stream. Gear. I think I could spend a whole podcast on YouTube gear, and actually that may be a topic we do in the future, but I'll touch on audio, video, and lighting is your first very important things. And then you're going to need a computer that obviously can do video editing. Beyond that, you can kind of get away with most of that. I would not go buy a camera. I would just use a cell phone if you have a decent one or a newer one. You can get high audio very easily. I have Rode for most of my stuff. I have the shotgun mic, which is like kind of just a small little boom mic that hangs right off the camera or your phone. And then I also have the Rode wireless mics. I absolutely love those. I bought the DJI ones as well because they actually have two microphones that you can have like a podcast type conversation with those, small little lav wireless mics. Both of them are excellent. Right out of the box, they're both very good as well. So I would go those directions. If you're ever worried about distance and you're not going to vlog, I probably would go with wireless instead of like a shotgun mic. Shotgun's really good for the vlogging type where it's, only a certain distance from your face. But the wireless mics, you can be really far away and still have really clear audio. So I think it's a huge bonus for not restricting the type of video you can do. So I would go with wireless. Lighting, I have everything from, these air lights for, this type of setup to a simple little square Ulanzi, I don't know what it's called, but just a square little face light. So Amazon has tons of lighting options. You don't have to get crazy. I don't have any huge box lights. I mostly use the one that's just on my camera. But lighting's simple. It's probably one of the easy. It's not simple in the concept. If you want to get really, really advanced with it, you can, and you want a really professional setup. But this is, I think these lights are like $100 a piece, and I have one on each side of my face. And then the Ulanzi thing, I think it was like $30 that I travel with mostly because I don't want to travel with obviously huge lights. But you can go a little bit minimum here. It won't be perfect. It won't have the perfect tones and everything, but you can do some of that in the editing portion as well. Camera, like I said, I would stick with my phone for now, especially starting out. Don't go spend a ton of money because if you end up not like doing it, it's going to be a waste of a lot of money and you're going to be a little bit resentful for making that decision. So just start trying. I would focus on your ideas, your titles, thumbnails first, and do a couple videos, do 10 and see if you still like it, because it is a bit of a process. Other gear for me, I think that are important. I do have a GoPro that I mostly use for like water stuff when we're going on vacation, or where I think if I had my phone out, it could break, and I don't want that. So I usually carry, and the reason I chose GoPro is because they have so many attachment options, from the head kind of wrap attachment to the chest mount for hiking and things like that, where I'm going to have to be able to use my hands to climb. Like when we go potentially like zip lining here in the fall, I'll probably either have the head or I actually probably end up doing the chest mount because I'm sure I'll have a helmet on. But yeah, so GoPro allows a ton of those different options, which I like that. But most of the non-action things I do with my phone now. I do have a digital camera, which is kind of behind me. And mostly I use that for tripod stuff where I'm talking directly into the tripod. But yeah, you can do that with your phone too. You could just get a cheap tripod with a cell phone holder. You don't need to get a digital camera. I think that's about it. A good bag to carry all the stuff in. Lots of batteries, lots of ways to recharge as well. You'll need that. And then a decent computer with the editing software, like I said. DaVinci Resolve, what is it? Not the Photoshop. I forget what Adobe's editing program is. You can do it with CapCut Online. Just realize space. You'll need lots of storage, whether that's cloud-based or hard drives. That is up to you, but that's another thing you'll need lots of. So be aware of that. I think that's gear, but maybe we'll do a podcast specific about gear. Maybe like top 20 pieces of gear to make, content. We could do that as well. Video topics. What topic can you address that solves a need for your audience? That is the easiest ways to come up with topics for just early days. And you can get more advanced and think of things, but maybe your first 10 should just be problem solving videos. That is an easy skill. And even if there's other videos out there that have been done, people like to see other people's views, even if it's the same content. So do not be afraid. I was very worried early on about doing a video that somebody else had out there. You do not have to be the first to something, because remember, your view or your take is always different. So I will, scour YouTube to find like topics and things like that. I don't actually do a whole lot of watching of similar topics of other people. A lot of people will do a ton of research to get ideas and stuff like that. I don't. I probably should, but I also never want to be in the headspace where I'm pulling things from other people. So I try to steer clear of that, but there's really easy ways to watch content, consume, and get good ideas and just take a different spin. I very much take my own spin on things, and whether it's successful or not is kind of up to me and how I tell the story. But you can do tons of research and get really great ideas by, scouring YouTube and things like that. They call it the YouTube alphabet, I think it is, where you type in the search bar of topics and it'll just start pre-filling like the top 10, 20 topics as well, for those types of ideas. So don't be afraid of that as well. And then video topics, you can use things like vidIQ, you can use things like TubeBuddy, which are very helpful tools to look at topics. Once again, if you just focus on how can I solve an audience member's problem, you'll come up with a lot of very good ideas with that. The last one in this new YouTuber's guide I have is fear. So this one's very interesting, because early on you'll be terrified of the camera. You'll be terrified of speaking in front of. I don't do a whole lot of video capture in front of people, but let's talk specifically about like the camera in general. You practice. Practice is what gets you more comfortable. Starting 5 years ago by recording, I didn't know how much it would help me in my professional life. I think it was just a hobby, but I'm able to do very like job focused videos. Like I'm doing a bunch of culture based videos for the company right now, and they're goofy and I'm trying to add humor to them and I'm making fun of myself, and I know I'm going to get so much shit for it, but like that's all part of it, and I want it to be part of that. And you have to be very comfortable in front of the camera to be able to do something like that. So it doesn't bother me at all that I'm going to look like a complete asshole in some of these videos, but it also could make people want to watch them. So I think that's really beneficial for the end goal of people listening to the videos on what culture we're trying to produce. But it probably took 5 years to get comfortable, and even doing a podcast with professionals and other people I don't know, or people that I meet on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm not sure I would be in this headspace to do something like that if I didn't start this hobby a long time ago. So it is a skill to be comfortable in front of the camera. I think it is a skill to do it well. I wouldn't consider myself doing it well, but I'm way more comfortable than I was when I started. So the best thing you can do is just keep recording and trying new things. If you do a couple of video types and they don't do well, then switch it up and try something new. Like I'm doing a couple new things, or going maybe in a new direction for my gaming channel, because it's just a little stale for me right now. So I want to try a couple different things. Like the best thing is like you just try it, and then if it doesn't work, you can pivot. Like the harder part at the beginning is getting so caught up in the data and the numbers that it's not fun, because you're so nervous about it not performing well. But really, who gives a shit if it doesn't perform well? Like, if it's not your day to day and you're focused on only making money, it's your way of living, that would be super stressful. It's not for me. So it is a hobby, and I have to keep in that mind frame. It took me literally probably 2 years to get out of the mindset of analytics. Analytics are important, but they're not the be all end all. And if you don't get strapped down or caged by the analytics and how videos are performing, and use it as that didn't do well, or maybe I need to change this title up, or maybe this thumbnail's not doing well. I think this idea is strong, but the way I packaged it isn't well. So let me switch it up to see if the analytics do better. So I've had plenty of videos where I'll post them. I think the idea is really strong, and they'll flatline and they won't do anything. And it could just be a bad time for YouTube. Like around holidays, most people are doing other things other than their daily maybe consuming of YouTube. So never post really around holidays, because it's a bad time, unless it's a holiday specific thing, obviously. and then I'll switch a thumbnail or a title up, and then it'll really start taking off. So that happens a lot. Or you just let it sit and it'll take off, I don't know, a month from now. But it's all, you're trying to figure out what's best for the audience with each video. So use the analytics as a tool. Don't use them as a anchor, I would say. And that takes a little bit, at least for me, because I'm a very data centric person. It took me a while to get comfortable in the headspace to be like, okay, video didn't do well, I'll try something different. Because normally I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm an idiot. You gain a lot of, my chair creaking. I gotta get a new chair or add some WD-40. It takes a while to get to that point, but you'll get there if you just keep pushing along and just keep kind of. The greatest thing about YouTube that I think is really funny, and every person who's been doing it for a long time, who's way bigger than me, and I've heard this this exact sentence all the time, is you think you have YouTube figured out because a video does well. You do something similar and it dive bombs. That is so true. Every time I feel super confident, I'm like, I figured out the algorithm. I know exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of my life with YouTube. And then it doesn't work out. So it's a constant evolution of learning. So if you are a big learner and you'd like to figure things out and keep pushing the envelope and keep trying to figure out how the next video is going to go, or in general, just marketing, life, whatever, YouTube's the perfect thing. It's like the gift that keeps on taking. You never truly find the golden rule. So don't be afraid of the results. Just got into a stage of calmness, yes, and 4 channels, which I talked about. So the fear, get over the fear of the camera. It may take 50 videos, 20 videos, 100 videos. I'm not really sure. I can't remember when I got over the fear. Oh, the piece of it, when I'm traveling and I'm taking video, I don't do the vlog facing stuff. Some people are very comfortable with that. I don't like recording myself talking to a camera in front of other people. I'm very comfortable in my space or out in my woods or in my yard. That's why I do a lot of the talking portion of the videos at home, and then I'll lay B-roll over. So don't think you have to do a vlogging specific. Like when I'm in the middle of Disney World, if I'm taking video, I'm doing it for B-roll, and then I will talk over that B-roll in a safe space. I don't know, I can't think of an easier word. Some people are very comfortable vlogging in front of other people. I'm not, and I'm not sure I'll ever get to that comfortability. I know it just seems weird to me, but to each their own. I love the vlogging type of stuff. I love getting the feel, people getting the feel of you actually being in that. I think for my travel videos, it'd probably be very beneficial. I'm just not over that piece yet. And I also don't like making people feel uncomfortable who are around me. So I think that's the other piece. So when I take B-roll at resorts and things like that, I try to get up very early in the morning before like the resort gets very busy, and I go around the pools and the beaches and things like that to try to get B-roll that way. I try to not bother people when I'm getting video. Everybody does it a little bit differently. I don't know what the right rule of thumb is there. That's just the way I do mine. So just try to stay out of people's ways and not really annoy them and not cause a disruption, to everyone else on their vacation or whatever that looks like. But I've seen plenty of people do other sources of video that are highly successful. I just know that that's what works for me from a mental standpoint. So find what works for you. Lessons learned. It's way harder than it looks. It's the first thing I wrote. This is so true. Started out as, this looks cool. I think I could do something like this. I want to learn new skills. Is this a skill I could use for the rest of my life? And then it turned into like, this is fun. This is cool. When you have a video do very well, it's like intoxicating, and it's like, oh my gosh, if I can just get another one, another one, and then it's just up and down. It's a roller coaster, right? And you are your own videographer, editor, idea person, marketer. Like, people don't realize, like, successful people that are either on YouTube or content or TikTok or whatever, the work you have to do to become successful is a lot. So I know we look at that, content creation in this genre of like, it's such a waste of time. Some people do, or, narcissistic or whatever. It's a lot of work. A lot of late hours. It's a lot of planning. Like, before I go on vacation, I build an entire script, coming up with video ideas, laying things out, and I have an entire list of things that I need to record, which is enjoyable for me because when, I've told other people this, when I'm on vacation, I can R&R for probably, I don't know, 2-3 days, but then the rest I start like kind of getting antsy because I like having things to do. So these video lists and videos I need to record in areas of the resort and restaurants, and the to-do list for me gives me quite a bit of comfort. So that having that list to get through and do is very comforting for me. So when I do that, I take a couple days to relax, and then I'm running around the resort, in between before people get out of bed or late at night or whatever, to pull B-roll and then start checking that stuff off my list. So then when I get home, I can do my voiceover record and then start laying that B-roll. And the more planning and the more organizing I do when I'm on vacation of clips and everything and putting them in folders, the faster that editing process is. If you kind of just throw everything into a folder, it gets a little bit more difficult there. But so you are everything unless you pay people to be parts of your team. I don't want to kind of always put that kind of money into it. I do have some help here and there, but that was just really recent for me that, there's certain, with having 4 channels, I can't get to everything all the time. So finding your niche approach superpower is harder than it looks. That is absolutely true. Think about what you love and what you're good at when you can talk a lot about and what may be helpful to people. That should take a little bit of time, so take some time with that process, but that is also difficult. So details, non-storytelling, reviews, like there's all kinds of different ways to make content, and just make sure it's something you can talk a lot about, because once again, you'll have days where you don't want to do it. The toughest critic will be yourself. That is absolutely true. I think that's true with a lot of things, whether that's work related or, any type of hobby or whatever. That'll be true for this. So with, you will watch things. I do watch some of my videos back, especially just for content or video or like space, lighting, standing, not standing, that kind of stuff. Like early on my videos, a lot I was sitting. It's so unprofessional. I wish I would have been standing. I know I'm sitting right now, which is funny, but this is kind of a podcast, so I think this is okay. Maybe, maybe not. I guess we'll see. And so yeah, just you will have to review some of that content. Oh, my creaking. That's okay. You can be critical on yourself, but realize it's a process and you'll learn. Don't expect to be any decent until like 100 videos is like kind of the rule of thumb. I don't know how true that is, but that's what everybody says. So toxicity, it will always be there. And my headphones just shut off. I guess I don't need them. I'm not sure why I'm wearing them. Yeah, toxicity will be there. People will be making fun of your videos. People will criticize your approach. Um, so it'll always exist no matter what your channel topic is. I get a lot less hate on my travel channels than I do on my gaming channel, which you could certainly imagine. The travel is it's older people that are looking to go to these places, so they appreciate the detail and the insight and things like that, and they'll ask specific questions that maybe some stuff I missed. So that's really cool. I get lots of thanks on there. I do get, if I do a review that I don't like a place, for instance, the Baha Mar in Bahamas, I got quite a bit of negative feedback on that from people who go there all the time with their families, and it's very nostalgic for them, and I totally get that. It's just my opinion was I didn't like it. I thought it was very expensive, and for what you're paying for, I didn't think it was up to snuff. But it's cool if you like it. Like, that's fine. It's not a big deal. I don't dislike you for liking it. I just didn't like it myself. So, but you'll always get that, especially if it's a little bit controversial, which I don't think it is. It's okay if I don't like a specific place that we visited. The gaming world is awful, toxic. I know that. I'm expecting that. I never really get upset with people. My rule of thumb with this is how you deal with this. If you wouldn't take advice from the person, don't take criticism from them. That's the rule of thumb I usually stand by when it comes to toxicity or comments or life in general. So yeah, people will get upset with you. They'll say kind of nasty, gross things. But if you don't know the people, who cares? Now, if it's a family friend or someone you have a lot of stock in or you appreciate and you go to for advice, I would say listen to them and maybe think about what they're talking about. But if it's not, you can comment back a nice thing or say thank you for the input or advice. That's what I do, and then I move on. Like, it's very, very easy. It's funny how many times people come out guns a-blazing, and then I'll answer back with something polite or thank them for their insight of their approach, or I didn't see things that way, and then it'll turn into a conversation and they'll end up subbing to me anyway just because they were like, oh, I was looking for a fight and you didn't come out that way. So wow. I don't know, to each their own. Not everybody's that way, but keep learning new techniques, approaches, AI advantages. So as soon as you think you've figured out, you'll get disappointed. I talked about this a little earlier. YouTube's constantly evolving. YouTube is adding features all the time. to YouTube Studio or YouTube itself in the sense of shorts, making shorts and long form videos, what people are consuming right now. It's big to make a push for longer form videos. That's kind of hot right now. As of the last probably 3 to 5 years, it was more short versions were winning. Now long bases going is coming back. So using AI for ideas, scripts, thumbnails, all that kind of stuff as well. Try to stay on top of that. You have to kind of constantly evolve as the technology evolves. So you can use those techniques and different programs to make your life a little bit easier. But it is an evolution. It'll constantly be an evolution because we as human beings are constantly evolving as well and what we like. So you will have to take a look at that. And it's about the long game. So remember, it'll take a while. Subs are hard. First 100 are very difficult. I remember that I saw, I think for all 4 channels or 3 channels, I don't have 100 on the podcast yet, but the 3 channels, the first 100 seemed like they took forever. And then once you get over that 100 mark, I feel like it picks up pace a little bit. I don't know if the algorithm changes or what, if YouTube's just making sure that you're like in it for the long game and not just like, fizzling out and then they really start bringing an audience to you. So it is a long game. You could have some early success. You could have a video that really does well and then won't do well for a long, long time on your other ones. It's all over the place. Yeah, just realize that years and not months or days, unless you get super lucky or you know exactly what you're doing. Some people are really good at it. I have the next sector is cross contamination. I think I use these words because like the skills and how it's the skills I've learned through doing YouTube and how they've kind of cross contaminated into other aspects of my life. And I talked about this a little bit. The skills have leaked into my leadership role. So being comfortable talking in front of cameras, being able to be comfortable going on other people's podcasts or talking in general in front of large groups. I think that's really helped me. The skill set of script writing, marketing, personal branding, company marketing, being able to speak on that level from a sales perspective, human psychology, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Where our customers' mindset, solving our customers' problems, like all of that stuff. I was really novice to sales and marketing in general. And then once I started this venture plus started my new role, I think they've kind of bounced ideas off of each other and helped me in the workspace. I'm not afraid to put myself in front of camera and make fun of myself on camera. Humility, huge. I don't know if I had this much humility prior to doing YouTube. I'm not sure. I wish I could remember, but I'm thinking it helped a lot, especially when people shit all over you online in the comments and you're like, oh, cool. I forgot I'm not that cool. Thank you for reminding me. So that's really fun. If you want to really bring yourself down a couple pegs, post something on a gaming channel. Trust me, the world will let you know. So personal branding, I think that's gotten a lot stronger as well, and all the aspects of that and what good looks like. I wouldn't say I'm excellent at it, but I'm learning day by day and learning from other people and, just putting yourself out there on YouTube for even conversations at work and people saying, hey, saw this video. I remember I had one of my Rivian videos actually blew up a little bit at the very beginning when I posted it, and a couple like online sources picked it up for articles about my truck. And then there was people at work who were like, hey dude, like your video showed up on my, like the left side of my phone and like my news feed. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. So that was kind of cool. And then company focused media, it's really helped with company focused shorts or ideas for shorts. And I don't know if I'd be that open with our construction content if I didn't kind of have this venture. So that cross contamination has really helped in that space. So those are all the notes I have. 5 years, 4 YouTube channels, it's a lot of work. It's taught me consistency. It's taught me planning. I've learned a ton of new skills. If I've ever need them in the future, I think I'd be able to really hunker in. I have a lot of the basics down, which I think is really helpful. And I can speak the language as well around that kind of stuff. And I'm constantly learning new stuff. I love listening to really, really successful YouTubers and talk about their process and everything like that. That's helpful. I met some of my best friends, Mike, who was the first episode on the podcast. I met him on the Star Cruiser, and episode coming up on the podcast about the Star Cruiser as well. Because I don't know if anybody saw that, but there was a recent YouTube video that dropped that's got like 5 million views about why it failed, and this YouTuber's very in-depth review of it. So we're gonna do a little bit of reaction on that on our own experience. But met Mike because he was carrying around a huge camera, and I said, "Are you a content creator?" And he said, "Yeah." And then we kind of kicked it off, and then found out he streams, and I've been friends ever since. So uh, I probably wouldn't have ever had that relationship if I wouldn't have knew what I was looking at when I saw a huge rig and been like, "Oh, this person must be doing some content." So um, yeah, it's been. And the other thing I really enjoy, especially about the travel stuff, is I have memories captured on video of all the places we visited. So, and the videos that I put together for those, even though they're review based, I always have that kind of remembering going back and seeing all the places we visited and just being very special, even though it's not family focused per se. I'm probably going to start pulling more of that into the videos just because it's, when I talked to Mike on the first episode, he talked a lot about legacy with his content. And I don't know if I've ever put that word into my content, but I think I really appreciate that approach to it. So I may add some of that, but that evolution will happen forever, especially in the YouTube space on figuring out what your voice looks like, and that can evolve as well. So I think that's where that's happening for me. I think that's everything. Once again, if you're just listening to this and you have any questions or you're thinking about starting a channel yourself, certainly shoot me a note, email, LinkedIn, on my YouTube, whatever. Uh, I'll put all my YouTube links obviously in the descriptions to this and also on down below in the description of the YouTube side of things. But it's really enjoyable. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, gear questions, or coming up with niches, names, whatever that looks like. I'm not an expert, but I have, obviously 5 years of experience of grinding through this, what I did well, what I didn't do well, which usually teach you more than what you do well, and then can kind of help point in some directions. I have had some conversations with other people who were thinking about it. Um, I find it very rewarding. It is a lot of work, but I find it very rewarding as well. So I think that's everything. Once again, circling back to the very beginning of this episode, thank you for everyone who's either watched, listened, helped, supported, family, letting me do this crazy thing. And anybody who's already booked to be on the podcast or wants to be on, thank you for that. The people who I don't know who booked to be on the podcast, thank you so much for taking a chance. Joseph was my first guest that I didn't know personally on the podcast, and to have someone do that, to reach out and ask, like it's actually a huge relief to realize that maybe something you're doing is enjoyable for some people. So, the 68 downloads, the 12,000 views, really appreciate all that. Appreciate everybody's help. And yeah, episode 11. Mom, did we make it? All right, I'll catch everybody on the next one.